Welcome to Seeking Alpha's CEO Interviews. Quality of leadership is a decisive factor in stock performance, so we provide in-depth interviews with the best and brightest CEOs in the public markets. We publish limited excerpts from our interviews on social media platforms and the full interviews at seekingalpha.com and in the highly rated Seeking Alpha mobile app. To find the full interviews, open seekingalpha.com or the Seeking Alpha mobile app and search for the phrase CEO Interviews, or simply type a stock ticker into the search box.
All right, welcome back to Seeking Alpha. Got our guest today, Mark Dixon, Chief Executive Officer and founder of International Workplace Group, IWG. Mark, thanks for being with Seeking Alpha.
Great to be here. Thanks very much, Josh.
Absolutely. Normally, I'm going to ask about your background, how you ended up being the CEO of IWG. But first off, maybe flex space isn't something that is on the tip of everyone's tongue, even though it's roughly 2 to 3% of the global office space and has a 15 to 30% compounded annual growth rate. What is flex office?
Well, flex office is, look, you have to think about it like you would think about a truck fleet being outsourced, a car fleet being outsourced. So, companies years back when I started in business used to own their own trucks. They used to own their own cars and they repaired them, bought them and all that. No one does that now. Everyone outsources to specialists who operate trucks for them. They can do it at a lower price, much more efficiently. It's off the balance sheet. It just works for companies and they focus on their core business, which is not running a truck fleet. So with offices, historically, companies have gone out. It's a very complicated process, the real estate industry, whether that's in the United States or globally. You've got to go out, you've got to find space, negotiate it, build it, operate it. And by the way, by the time you've done all that, it's not right for what you want anyway, because you want, having run businesses for many, many years, you've always got not enough space or too much space. So it's a very hard one to match, your requirement, your company's requirements with what you have. So it's too long and it's too cumbersome and it's too expensive and it's sort of a distraction from everyday business. So in essence, we allow companies to take space from us, but it's ready to go. So it's great offices, well designed, with all the furniture, with all the tech, with all the support staff. With help desks, with IT help desks, and whether your people are all in one office or you want one person in every state in the US, we supply that. You can sign up today. You can move it tomorrow. It's all very flexible. Means, if you say you want 100 people, you can have 100 people wherever you want and move them around the system. So it's lower cost, super flexible. It's outsourced. It's off the balance sheet. Important in IFRS 16, and I can't remember what the US equivalent is, where now property is on the balance sheet and looks like debt. So it has a lot of advantages, and that's pre-COVID-19 pandemic. Post-COVID-19 pandemic, flex space is about companies wanting to provide their people with space wherever they are, rather than in central locations in CBDs or otherwise. So you start to get much more of a distributed workforce where it's, an employee, a worker, increasingly will just get an allowance to take an office where they want, or they can work from home, just like they would use an office like a hotel room when they need it. So it's a very exciting place, but flex office is essentially an outsourced office system that you can use whenever you want. We operate 3,400 buildings in 1,200 cities around the world, and in 120 countries. So you can have this in Togo, West Africa, if you want, or in Seattle, or wherever you happen to be.
Mm-hmm. So IWG roughly had $4.5 billion in revenue. Curious about your background, how you ended up becoming the CEO of IWG and amassing that kind of revenue.
Look, I founded the business in 1989 with, and I'd done 6 other businesses, which I'd founded and sold. And I started this one in Brussels in Belgium in 1989 with 1 center. And from that 1 center, first year I did 2, the second year, the second one. And basically for the first 10 years, grew the business 100% every year. I financed personally the first 8 years. So we had no debt, no private equity support. We had support through private equity in the 9th and 10th years, raised 200 million. And then we IPO'd in the 11th year. And, we've grown since then. It's been, we've learned a lot along the way, but every one of those centers has been, sort of grown, organically, mostly a bit of acquisition to create this network today.
So you mentioned some advantages of Flex, like reducing costs. You talked a little bit about the pandemic, which I want to talk about in a moment, because there's been a huge shift about wanting to reduce a commute and work from home. But the agility for fast growing companies to kind of figure out their own space. Wonder if you can expand on that, and as well as you mentioned fixed leases not being on the balance sheet, and other.
They are on the balance sheet now, Josh.
Oh, they are.
They are. So, if you're running a corporation, if you have a 10-year lease, conventional lease, it's on your balance sheet and it looks like it's debt. So all the 10 years of that lease are on your balance sheet as debt. It's an obligation. So it looks like, debt. You can see it on ours, by the way. So, that's a major change for corporations. They in the beginning, it was all grandfathered in. It's a change in the accounting rules. It's not affecting covenants and headroom, but in the medium term, it will start to affect covenants and headroom. So companies with a lot of this, if you have a lot of space, and it's fixed space, that's going to affect your credit rating, or your ability to raise capital. So, but coming back to flexibility, I'll turn it to, if I may, to where we are today. What I'm seeing increasingly with companies, and I would say this is large and small. So today's startup and yesterday's fast-moving growth company, we have seen more and more companies move to a much more flexible hybrid work model. And what they're doing is very simple. Just as a sort of close to home example, the daughter of a very good friend of mine just got her first job in Atlanta, well-paid job, but that job was a job with no office. And and it's a very forward-thinking, very successful company in the tech space, and very fast-growing, who have moved to a policy of office allowance or work from home. And so it didn't stop this young person and in fact, she wanted to get an office or somewhere to work, because she couldn't work at home. So, modern companies are saying, hybrid, we offer hybrid. That allows you to work from home if your home's big enough, your internet's good enough. You can work locally, just pick an office nearby where you live, or you can come into one of our offices. We have less of them, but we still have hubs where people can get to. So companies are changing. These companies have moved very quickly over the last year to change the way they operate, and to obtain the benefits from this, new acceptability of working in a hybrid way. So, if they'd have done it 18 months ago, 2 years ago, that would have been unusual. Now they're able to lower costs. You can take 50% out of your costs minimum. And we've seen companies take 70% out of their costs. You can hire people anywhere in the country that you want, because you don't have to hire people near where your offices are anymore. You hire them anywhere. So you can hire better people, sometimes at better prices. And, your ESG, your environmental footprint, carbon footprint will be slashed by at least half, because one, you have less fixed office space, and two, you are stopping some of your workforce commuting. And overall, so it's cheaper and it's what people want, and it's popular. And so we're seeing more and more companies do that. Now that's sort of small companies, startups. If I were starting a company tomorrow, and I've started up many in the past, that's what I do. And it's the way we operate today as a company, even though we're in the office business. And we've also seen very large companies like NTT, 300,000 people, Standard Chartered Bank, 95,000 people, who have come to us and signed a contract for those numbers of people who start to move to a hybrid model. And over the past 8 weeks or so, we've signed up more than 1 million new members who, and these are from large companies. This is not including all the small ones, who want to move in this way. So the world is moving. It's a digital disruption. It's nothing to do with real estate. This is to do with, basically technology allowing people and companies to work in a different way. And the pandemic was a big catalyst that accelerated something that was happening anyway. It just brought it, to everyone's kitchen table, quite literally. It is really changing at pace. So it will change the geography of the United States, of most countries. It's not the same in every country, but it redraws the lines. It changes geography. It's a really big change. It's not something small. You mentioned earlier, there's a debate, by the way, which I just feel I should correct, that very, very quickly, commentators and people, journalists writing, they start to write about work from home or work from the office. It's not one or the other. Those people that can work from home and want to and can be productive, no problem for them doing it. Those that need to go to an office, and I'm one of those people, Josh, I'm not very good at working from home, so I get distracted. I'll go but I'm not going to commute very far to an office. My office is, 60 meters, 60 yards away from where I live. That is what it's about. And then it's about getting people together to collaborate, in a more regular and more curated, more organized fashion, rather than have everyone come into one building every day and they sit at a desk and do what they're doing. You get people in once a week and you collaborate, you do things together and do jobs where you need to work as a team. You can do this ad hoc. You can do this on one day. You can do this once a month. That's how it's going to operate. Everything will be run by Microsoft, basically, or Google, because they will give you the productivity tools. They will give you the data, and you will have a different company as a result that is more productive, that has lower costs, lower footprint, and you have people that are happier. To sort of, one statistic I'll leave with you and I'll come back to you is this: 74% of respondents in a survey, when asked if your company forced you to come back to work 5 days a week in the office, would you stay with that company? 74% said they look for another job, which is obvious. I mean, commuting is unnecessary. That's what people, for most, not for everyone. So back to you, Josh.
Yeah, definitely seeing a lot more of that in the news right now about people not wanting to go back full time. And so is the productivity tools that you mentioned, Zoom and Teams and other Microsoft products or other productivity tools, is that driving the growth? Because you had said that the pandemic has proven the ability of global workforces to work effectively in different ways and in different places.
Yeah.
So what's driving the growth?
Yeah, look, to me, Microsoft Teams and Zoom are like the old original email from Microsoft. It's almost like Yahoo email, if you remember that, or AOL email. So this is just the beginnings of a technology segmental revolution that will provide full visibility to companies of what their people are doing, where they're doing it, and how productive they are. So, all it's just using the data that's already there. And these tools will advance. I mean, if you look at, we're on Teams a lot of the time and Zoom, the improvements in Teams and Zoom, compared to a year ago, they're completely different and much better. Okay, in a year's time, they'll be again, completely different and much better. And this way of working, which remember people adopted within a matter of weeks, and again, surveys done, companies did not report a drop in productivity. In fact, the opposite, they had to stop people working because people tended to do too many hours. So, but the technology will change. So modern companies, there'll be haves and have-nots in this area. You'll have companies that will sort of, I've explained it to our team, that they'll sort of say, like the old company, a lot of companies said, we're not going to adopt email. We're going to keep with fax, post, and telex. Email, it's a bit new. We're not sure if it's secure, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't adopt it. But those companies, most of those aren't here anymore. Email was such an effective method of communication. The companies that didn't adopt it would not be competitive against companies in the same sector that did. And this is the same with this technology. So companies that adopt this new way of working, this new technology, this much more focused, companies with a much more of a focus on the workforce and their productivity using data and technology, those are the companies that will be on balance more successful than the ones that say, no, we're going to have everyone sitting in an office and hope they talk to each other. Which, I've been running business for 45 years. And, yeah, of course, conversations take place and all this, but I can tell you that there is nothing like collaborative meetings, well organized, with a great agenda to get people talking. They really don't talk that much when they're all sitting in an office. And, these conversations around the coffee machine are generally not about business, they're about everything else. So, to me, it's obvious and it's happening.
I want to dive into some of the impacts from COVID-19. First thing I want to jump into is some restructuring that you guys are doing. Regis and some other entities that you have, they filed a few different restructuring, some bankruptcies. And just for our investors, kind of wanted to have you highlight some of the reasonings behind that, maybe some financial highlights from last quarter and outlook ahead.
Look, it's in our business, it's really important that the risk is managed. So we run with a matched book. That means all liabilities are closed-end liabilities. There's no open-end liabilities. Some of our competitors have much more open-ended liabilities, and it hurts them in times like this, times of stress. So we have restructured or closed about 200 of our centers. So this is about 7%, it's about 6% of our units. These were marginal units where we couldn't get some kind of resolution with our landlord partner. We've basically shuttered them and opened centers nearby. So if you look, yes, we use the bankruptcy code for this, and it's a common thing in our industry to do that. So these are limited bankruptcies and closures, and we have to change the inventory. So we've opened as many as we've closed. If you look at the first quarter of this year, we had a slight growth rate, of about 1% in the first quarter. So that's net of all closures. So, it's a necessary evil, Josh, in our industry, if you're going to run a match book, which we do. So, and we've taken charges. We took about in dollars, about $350 million of charges for all closures, all restructurings. And as a result of that, we've taken around $300 million of costs, annual costs, out of the business. Okay, so we have a reshaped business. It's what you have to do. This is a very stressful time in any business, and in particular in ours, in some parts of the world. So we have to, at this time, you have to trim off any non-performing operations. So that's that. If we look at performance, we had a performance last year that it declined, but the underlying business was very resilient. So we came from our first quarter 2020. That was our best first quarter in our 30-year history. And that was as a result, Josh, of more companies moving to hybrid and flex working. So COVID then obviously has slowed that down, because companies, basically did not started to use less and less offices. So we lost customers and won customers during the year. Occupancy reduced, but was resilient. So we lost about 5 points of occupancy in the following year. Our services were affected. People aren't in the offices. We sell less cups of coffee, and basic services affected, and so on. So a down year in the rest of the year, and into the first quarter of this year. From from March onwards, we flattened out in March, and then in April and May we've seen occupancy increases. So the sort of nadir is sort of towards the end of March, beginning of April, and that we're increasing occupancy, price, and service revenues. We adjusted outlook just this week, in fact, or in the past week, and this was simply because of the speed of recovery, where we expected a faster speed. We're still going to have a recovery. We're seeing that, but the speed of recovery would be slightly slower. So we lowered estimates to allow us to make sure the market's in line with what we expect. So we've got a huge number of customers joining up and starting to use, and we've got a growing business, thankfully. But it's just the speed. If all restrictions were lifted tomorrow, we'd be growing a lot faster. But it's going to be stop-start, we think, through the summer.
How does that translate into profit margins for the last year? And what are going to be some of the key drivers for your profit margins in the next few years?
Look, for us, ours is a simple business. It's, it's one based around, obviously revenues and costs, but the revenues are made up of basically you've got occupancy and price and services. And, we pride ourselves on having a very healthy service percentage revenue. It's the highest in the industry. It's 4 times higher than any of our competitors, because we have a whole range of services we supply to our customers, far wider, which helps our margin. And then it's occupancy and price. In terms of costs, as I mentioned earlier, we've taken out about $300 million of annual costs. So, going forward, the hurdle, if you like, is a lower hurdle as we go through this year and into 22. So, the good news is we've moved into, growing EBITDA and growing cash flow, and costs very much under control. And we've said to investors that our growth rate in terms of the network size this year will grow, in notwithstanding a few more closures, will grow, and we're expecting to have a growth rate in the 5 to 10% range, which is not bad in a year as badly affected as this one is. And pretty much all of those are all partnership deals, like management contracts and so on, with building owners. So they're low risk, low capital. One of the things we're also doing, because over the years, we've been producing $600 or $700 million a year in cash, but we've been reinvesting it. I mean, if you go back to the beginning, as I described, I opened 1 center, I reinvested the cash, did 2, and then did 4, and compounded up, creating the capital to do it. That's what we do. But now we've changed that model where we're moving much more to asset light. So we're producing capital and we can dividend more of the capital, the more of the cash flow that we make, because we can grow quickly without investing as much as we did in the past. More property owners and investors understand the potential of flex work as a building owner, as an investor, and are wanting to put their buildings on our platform.
When looking at other platforms like WeWork, they went from a $47 billion valuation to less than 4.7 billion. Does that scare some investors away from looking at IWG, or how else, when someone wants to look at your brand over the competitors, why would they choose yours?
WeWork's a bit of an anomaly, Josh. I mean, they've made a film about it and they'll write books about it, but it's not the normal business. They do what we do, but they did the opposite to what I did, which was start with no capital, build almost everything. The entire business has been built with my business with $300 million of capital input. Okay, that's it, net, the whole thing. They've started with, they've put in $12 billion or 15, I'm not sure what the number is now. But that is just a completely different business. They do what we do, they're the same size as us, but they don't do it in as many places, and they're much more CBD than us. It's a totally different model. There are a few others, but generally in this industry, Josh, it's very fragmented. There's lots of small players, and we are the Marriott and the Hilton, and there's lots of little small chains that will have 10 units or 20, maybe 2. So the average size of companies doing this is like $5 million of revenue. Lots and lots of small people. But that's not what corporations want. They want to get use of a network everywhere. So coverage is key in this. So look, WeWork, if you can comp against WeWork, but it's a hard one because obviously the valuation sort of irrelevant. If you're an investor, you would be looking at how much capital went in and how much cash flow can I get out. I mean, that's what you used to do, and that's what I was brought up on. But generally, in my experience, these sort of anomalies eventually, flow out. They'll do fine, but they've got a tough gig, over the next year or so because of where they are.
What are the chances that some large corporation like Amazon picks them up because they want to have a worldwide opportunity for their employees to find a work spot? Do you think that's an opportunity, or do you think that's an exit strategy?
No, it's Amazon. Well, they come to us first because we do a lot of business with Amazon, and then we've got the coverage. So I hope they'd knock on our door first. No, it would not be efficient. That would be like Amazon, and I'm going to eat my words on this probably, Josh, but that's a bit like Amazon deciding to buy the Ford Motor Company because they use a lot of trucks and cars. They're buying content for the streaming, but it's a big shout. No, we're the sort of thing that you want to have outsourced. Will there be companies coming in the future doing this? Yes, there will. And having peers, Josh, is a great thing, because you can only value it's much easier to value companies when there are peers, and our only peer at the moment is WeWork, and that's a complete anomaly. So you're questioning, was it valued at 47 billion? It's 4 points. They're going out in a SPAC at 12 billion, which, again, will that help our valuation? Our valuation today is about $3.84 billion. But we are the same size, profitable, and growing much more quickly. So you would have thought that if someone values them at 12, then we should be valued at more than 12. Okay, so either they're going to come down or we're going to go up. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch once the tide goes out and the data is fully available and you can see what's going on.
COVID-19 caused a lot of commercial real estate to kind of evolve that flexible workspace. And you guys have kind of shown that you're trying to position yourself to succeed in this new environment. Do you see repurposing of other buildings that aren't being used into flexible workspaces and expanding opportunities for people in not only cities, but residential areas as well?
We're doing it. We already have lots of them. We're doing a lot more. We're converting retail parks. We're converting in residentials where you want to be. The most expensive real estate in the United States won't be in Park Avenue, Manhattan, or Fifth Avenue. It's going to be where people live, where well-off people live, where workers live. And we know this historically. It's just going to become more, more of a fact in the future. So everything eventually will become local, because that's where digital leads. In the end, it changes the supply chain. You can see it happening. Everything comes to your door rather than you having to go and find it. It's happened with retail. It's happened with, you don't have to go to the cinema. You got Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and others. So it reverses everything, and that's again, your outcome is different geography.
Mm-hmm. We think we've covered a lot. Is there anything else that you want to cover right now? Any links that you want to provide for investors and or potential small businesses or corporations, anybody who wants to get in touch with you or check out IWG?
Well, if you can email me at mark.dixon@iwgplc.com. Go onto our website, IWG.com. I think that there's some very good material out there done by Ernst & Young and Deloitte. There's a lot of research now on hybrid work and how companies are changing. I'm talking to you from a supplier point of view where it's very apparent, but they are talking to the companies who are saying, they're speaking the same language, and it is moving at pace. So there's some great stuff out there. But apart from that, I really appreciate your time today, Josh. And hopefully someone will get in touch with some ideas for us.
Absolutely. All right. With that, I want to thank my guest, Mark Dixon. He is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of International Workplace Group, IWG. Mark, thanks for being with us at Seeking Alpha.
Thank you very much indeed.